Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. A lot of heavy hearts in Christendom tonight. Non habemus papam. We have no pope. We're familiar with that phrase, habemus papam, when they pick one, and we'll hear it again and soon. But we know we don't have a pope. What we don't know is what comes next. Now, I say what and not who for a reason. First, how we got here. Francis passed right after Christendom celebrated the Lord is risen. The timing adds to the mystique of the man and the moment, but what he said in his last message, the urbi et orbi, to the city and the world, that should matter more. Francis believed the Catholic faith, and really being a Christian, could be articulated in a single phrase: love, mercy. And if his legacy is a reminder and indeed an instruction to us in the need for this, he achieved enough. Some of his last words recalled Micah 6:8, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That is what it is to be a follower of Jesus. He ordered a Jubilee year of mercy in 2016. He described mercy as love's second name. I mean, this is what he was about. And he was certainly about that as Cardinal in Buenos Aires, for all his faults. And he's a man, so he had plenty. The two words, love, mercy, are a command. Jesus' biggest, in fact, a life instruction, to forgive 7 times 7 times 70, as the Bible states, to turn the cheek, but to do more than resist, to insist on compassion and to practice care and concern. Being a Christian is not supposed to be a mere membership or an emoji or an icon after your name. It is a behavior. That's what Francis believed and taught. We already know what Francis thought about his successor. He hopes they take not his name, not Benedict's name, but John the 24th, not John Paul III, John the 24th, after John the 23rd, the good pope, the reformer who Francis revered, dedicated the Jubilee year to him. John the 23rd, the man who brought Vatican II and all the promise of which was never realized. Modernizing conventions like removing celibacy and allowing women to be equal members in the church in terms of what they can do and what positions they can hold, and other designs of inclusivity that didn't happen and likely won't in my lifetime. But now, even though Francis selected 80% of those eligible to vote in the next conclave and supposedly picked them to expand the diversity within the College of Cardinals, many suggest the next pope may reflect the extremism and conservatism and, frankly, harshness of populist movements in Europe and back here at home. However, I want to draw your attention to a final act that defined Francis. It matters to me that our Vice President, J.D. Vance, became what was the last head of state Francis met with before he died. Vance, as you may know, is a convert to Catholicism. That used to be a rare thing, but it is a thing now with his generation. We're seeing more and more of it as people came out of the pandemic and they don't know what's going on, and they look at the world and all the rules have changed, but there are no rules. People cling to things, and often they cling to orthodoxy, and we're seeing that even within Catholicism. Now, look, it was no secret that Pope Francis did not like Trump's politics, okay? The Pope condemned his political beliefs and those of J.D. Vance, especially around immigration. And yet, he met with Vance. Francis was sick, likely knew he was near the end, and yet he met with Vance. Why? Why would you spend such precious time with someone you felt was a rejection of what mattered most in your faith? Because that's not true. Because Francis didn't judge that way. Because he tried to love mercy, and he showed compassion, the divine deliverance of grace, forgiveness that none of us deserves, but God bestows anyway, and if you believe in him, you do that to your best ability. So even in that final moment, even in meeting with someone whom he felt was likely part of the problem when it comes to politics, he met with him. That was Francis. And the mocking from righties and alleged Christians about Vance killing the Pope, that is who we are. We are weak, we are ugly, we are mean. Too many of us, anyway. I know it was just Twitter. But let's be honest, it's a poison platform that has become a projection of us at our worst. It's the nation's loudspeaker. There's value there, could be more. But what comes out of it consistently is the opposite of loving mercy. The Pope wasn't wrong about what his church should aim for, even if his successor takes a very different path. And he wasn't wrong about us. Our politics are harsh, unforgiving, uncharitable, and often godless. I see the failings in myself. I see them all the time. And I have a none too subtle desperation for anything that'll help me to be better. It's one of the things that has me choose faith, if not religion. The Catholic Church is man-made, and it has all of the flaws and errors of man, maybe even more than most. And I see those same flaws in all of us and in everything. We condemn the powerless, but condone the worst in the powerful, abandoning the signature virtue of our American religion, due process, and to do so out of petty expediency to kick out as many of those struggling the most as we can do. Now, Trump, as president, may have the right to do that as long as he starts obeying the courts and due process, but that doesn't make what he's doing right. Certainly not from a Catholic perspective. Certainly not the way he's doing it. Saying you're a Christian is easy. Loving mercy is hard. Now, I liked Bergoglio, Francis's real name, Mario Bergoglio. I liked much of what he was about as a cardinal in Buenos Aires. I went down there. I talked to people who knew him, for better and for worse. He had controversies. I was excited for his papacy as Francis, even if he was unable to bring many of the reforms I wanted and continued a pattern with abuse allegations. Now, I don't know what direction the next pope takes. The Catholic Church is a man-made institution. It is therefore inherently flawed, and it does a lot of stupid and bad things, as are all institutions. Do we know that now? Universities that ignore the balance of truth and inclusiveness, corporations that put profits above the people who create them for the corporations, and of course our government, led by people who are there by the will of others but do little for any but themselves. This is all why the instruction from Francis and John the 23rd before him derived from the original command, that of Maundy Thursday, right, from Jesus. So simple at the Last Supper. Love one another the way I have loved you, and do it for the love of me, and my name is truth. And yet it is so rarely followed. So I hope you, like me, take the opportunity of Francis's passing, not to glorify him in some superhuman way, because it's not what he was, but just to reflect on that message and what it means in your own life. Do you love mercy? You do not have to believe in God to make that your mantra. Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget, click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.